Hi, and welcome to the Days Gone podcast. I'm Claire Weaver, a screenwriter, author, and Days Gone fan, and this podcast is a place to discuss the game in all its glory, share my opinions, both popular and unpopular, and listen to me fangirl over one of the best games ever made. There will be spoilers ahead, so continue at your own risk. Welcome to the Freak Show. Today I want to talk about political structure in Days Gone and the ideologies of the different camps. Joining me for the discussion is Ritchie Belmont, a streamer, musician, and recent convert to the cult of Days Gone. Hey Ritchie, how you doing?
Hey, pleasure to be here, Claire.
Okay, so you're pretty new to Days Gone, right?
Yeah, I started playing the game Thanksgiving last year. I saw you talking about it, posting it online, because through social media, Instagram, and I actually did know about this game when it first came out in 2019, and I'm ashamed to say that the sort of the court of public opinion kind of made me push away from the game because there was an episode of some like Let's Play channel that I was watching, and they seemed more interested in their bits than the actual game itself. But to be fair, though, what they were showing was just the first 5 minutes of the game. I believe it's when they're chasing the bounty. And if you're gonna introduce a game, like it seems like if you're just gonna if you're just going to show the first 5 minutes of Days Gone, it's kind of doing the game a disservice. I don't know. It's just
No, you're absolutely spot on. It's an odd choice. If you can only show 5 minutes of any game, the first 5 minutes, it would not be the 5 minutes you should choose.
And I kind of thinking about all the games that I really, really fucking love. The first 5 minutes is not enough. That's kind of like, as you're playing it, an hour in, 30 minutes in. Mm-hmm. But first 5 minutes, and like I said, it kind of made sense because they were just doing their bits. And as far as I guess subconsciously absorbed it and went like, oh, I guess it's all right. Maybe I'll play it later. And then 2 years later, kind of like the game. 2 years later, I picked it up. So,
720 days gone, or 730 days gone.
I don't know the numbers. I'll take your word for it on that. But
yeah, 730. So I should mention as well, we know each other in real life. We've been friends for many years. And I think that's how I kind of influenced you to play Days Gone, was because I was just spamming my own social media with, hey, all my friends, I've started this podcast. I'm obsessed with this game. Everybody come check it out. And kind of pressuring as many people as I could to play it. Are you glad that I pressured you to play it, or are you regretting ever picking it up?
Well, pressure is a strong word. I mean,
I have any power over you.
A slight nudge. No, I mean, I take your opinion very seriously, and I think that if I see friendos out there being very passionate about something, I at the very least have to do like a simple like, huh, like, okay. And it just so happened that I guess the other reason why is because like I skipped like a generation with consoles. Because for reasons I don't understand, like the PS4, and I just barely got a Switch like at the beginning of 2020 because pandemic, mm-hmm. And I skipped the whole console of sorts. And obviously, you got to sell your soul for a PS5 or I don't know what the currency is nowadays to get one. So the fact that when the game finally showed up on Steam, I was like, well, it seemed like the stars were aligning for this moment where you're talking about it. It's on Steam. I looked it up on YouTube, and it just so happened I saw a bunch of videos talking about how incredibly underrated it is. So I was just like, Ritchie, you gotta play the game. And I did, and I'm very grateful I did, because now I'm here talking about it. So
that's awesome. So you didn't play any PS4 games? You don't have a PS4?
No, I don't have a PS4. For a really long time, I had my computer, and I was just like, I was a console hound. PS3 to sort of date me with age. It's PS3 was like the last console that I had.
Mm.
And when I want to say that the PS4 came out like 2013, 2014 or something like that.
Think you're
Just
right. Yeah.
yeah, something like that. I think when they were talking about how they were releasing Grand Theft Auto 5, uh, around that time, I don't know what happened. It just never occurred to me to go. And then once I acquired a computer and finally decided, I guess it was like a new year resolution of like 2014 or something. I don't know, but I just started playing video games on computer, and I just kind of stayed there for a really long time. So but it is super cool that games like Days Gone, Death Stranding, I think Horizon Zero Dawn is now out on Steam. So like, there's a lot of cool. For whatever you want to say about Sony, I think that they're slowly getting into the idea that there is, there are like people that are on PC that are willing to buy your game if you just give them an opportunity to buy it. So hopefully they start releasing Uncharted 4, which is I mentioned that in a previous stream with you and Sponicus Rex. By the way, hello. And People thought I was making fun of it, and I was like, no, 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 no. I'm not saying the trilogy. I just completely forgot that there was a fourth game because it came out on PS4 and I didn't
Right,
have
right.
one. So it's
Which
just like,
I was the one that I assumed that's what you meant because, as I've mentioned on that live stream, I don't think I've ever mentioned it on the. I might have mentioned it on the podcast, but I'm a huge Uncharted fan. But I kind of don't really like Uncharted 4. I mean, I love the game. I love the gameplay. I love a lot of the detail of that. But what I don't love is the retconning of Nate, his backstory, giving him a brother out of nowhere. I'm just like, what the fuck are
yeah,
you talking about?
that's what I heard. I heard that I haven't played it yet. And by the way, like, if you spoil anything, it doesn't matter to me because it's like
No, he
the
just
game, the
has a
game on its
brother
own.
at
Oh,
the
he has a
beginning. It's
brother.
like he just
Yeah, that's
has
all
one all of a
that's
sudden.
all I know.
I mean, there's some other stuff that they did that I'm gonna at some point in the future. I'm actually gonna do not a podcast, but I'm going to be doing something with Uncharted and talking about the same
Nice.
kind of things I talk about with Days Gone because I am almost as obsessed with Uncharted as I am with Days Gone. But you said on the live stream, you mentioned the Uncharted trilogy, and I was like, oh, damn, Richie knows what's up. He doesn't like Uncharted 4 either. And you were
Well,
like, no, no, no,
I haven't played the
I
fourth
just
one, but
forgot.
I don't know. But like I said, you and I, we're birds of a feather. So I'm just prepping myself up. Like, well, Claire doesn't like the fourth one, and so far, like, we're pretty much in the same wavelength when it comes to it. I love Uncharted. Uncharted's the
Yeah.
best. Like, one of my fondest memories that I have is playing Uncharted 2 with my little brother, and the whole thing about that was that he was trying to find all the artifacts, and
Mm-hmm.
but for him it was because he wanted the cool gold guns, and I just kept playing it over and over again because I was like, I need more story, I need to see the story every time. And his whole thing was like, wait a minute, are you just playing the game over and over and over again? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, find the artifacts. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And it was like a symbiotic relationship. He got his golden guns, and I got to experience the story over and over again. The three games that I've played, not hating on the fourth one because I haven't played it yet, but the three games are awesome. Like, it's just one after the other. Like,
Which
it's
one's your favorite?
Well, my heart says the third one.
Yeah, I love the third one.
The third
That's
one,
my
the
favorite.
third one is like, come on, shit got real. Like, it was awesome. The second one is my second favorite because it's the closest to. I like fun, blockbuster. Oh man, this I already lost the bet. I'm gonna talk about the Mummy, but I love
I was
films
gonna say I was
like,
gonna bring it up if you didn't.
you take a shot when you talk about Schizo. You take a shot when I talk about the Mummy, and then we both die from alcohol poisoning. So because it'll never end. But it's got that same vibe where the first one is like in a movie trilogy. The first one kind of sets up the universe. It's good, but it's just like, it's good. I like it. It's a nice romp. Second one, yeah, the second one ramps it up. You got this villain that's like, on paper, it seems kind of goofy to have someone that overpowered, that evil, that sinister, but
looking
it
at you,
works.
Lazarovich.
Yeah. And then, of course, and the second one, face it, you got played. I used to say that all the time. It was just like, I even did the hand things, and people would go, "Well, what's wrong with him?" Oh, just quoting the game, whatever. And then the third one, what I like about the third one is that shit got real. You have someone like basically you watch Nate progress as like basically a movie action star, and then you have the villain come up and say, "You ain't shit. I remember you when you were just a little shit, and you have no power over me."
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that can destroy me is a supernatural. That's the other thing I like about these games, is that the villain doesn't really get owned by Nate. These villains, kind of like Indiana Jones style, they get totally destroyed by this like supernatural power.
By their own greed for power.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what
yeah. It's
destroys
their
them.
well. I suppose that's the correct way. That's the correct answer.
That's what a writer would say.
Yeah. But for me,
Fucking
I'm like,
writers.
yeah, but for me, I'm like, oh man, Genie destroyed your ass or something like that, or just like, oh, the golden statue turned you into a freaking zombie or whatever. So, but you're the writer version's better. Your explanation of things.
It's also the British accent. It just makes me sound like I know what I'm talking about, which is
Oh yeah.
completely not true. I have no idea what I'm saying half the time.
Well, as as a man who lives in America, I said that weird, but I am trained as a true American. When I hear a British voice, I'm always a little bit cautious because you're either trying you're
I'm
either
either
my
smarter than you or mocking you.
yeah you're or both I think, and you're either trying to steal the same thing I'm trying to steal, or you're trying to take over, and like Star Wars, you're
Right.
trying to oppress me in some strange way, and I'm just part of the rebellion. So
I
and
mean,
you're just
it's
you're
not
just calling me
untrue.
rebel. You're calling me rebel scum like the
Mm-hmm.
entire 2 hour movie length. So that's
Yeah.
how it works. But
I should add that to the intro that you are rebel scum.
oh
Uh,
yeah, awesome. No, I take that with pride.
so okay, I want to talk about live streaming because you just started doing live streaming and you're doing Days Gone and some other games as well. Tell me about it. How's it going?
So far so good. I think the hardest part of streaming is trying to have a conversation with a theoretical person that's out there. Now, normally, when you're having a conversation with a person, you can see them as I'm seeing you. You can see how they react. If you're doing a bit, it also performing. It's got a mixture of both. When you're also performing, because you can see how they react, and if you're doing a bit or if you're having a conversation, and you can see whether or not people are enjoying it or not, you can kind of course correct. With streaming, the best you can get is someone sending you a message on chat, and
Saying you
so
suck.
yeah, well, that too. Someone I can't recall like the one session I had, but I do believe someone was saying something cool, and then it turned out it was a bot. So I was like, cool, I had my first
Oh,
bot on the road to success. So I know I must be doing something right.
you're doing something right when the bots show up, but still,
Yeah.
that sucks when you're like, oh, someone's running a game. Oh, no, it's actually a bot. Never mind.
No, they're like, hey, you're pretty good. Hey, by the way, I can totally hook you up with like 1,000 followers and 400 subs. And I'm like, oh, I'm talking to a robot.
Mm,
But aren't we all really? I mean, I'm talking to a camera, but it's like whatever.
yeah.
But the hardest part is just is keeping a conversation. And you had mentioned in your live streams with Sponicus Rex that talking is cool, playing is cool. Talking and playing is it's a different realm, and it reminds me of like high school when I was learning how to play a musical instrument, and it's sort of like on par with learning how to play and sing at the same time. It's
Mm.
not for everyone, but if you can do it, they will make you the singer. So that's how I got into it. They're like, "Wait, you can play and sing? Yeah, all right, you're
You're
the
up front.
singer. You're the front man. Oh, great.
Yeah. See, I learned how to sing. I play no instruments, but I just like muscle my way to the front. I'm like, I'm gonna just sing because that's all I can do.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't hurt to practice, but also like I understand like when a person knows their limits. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, uh, I also noticed that when I was playing Days Gone, and streaming, trying to carry a conversation, my motorcycle crashes went up like 1,000%. So they were right in banning texting and driving
Texting and
at the same
driving.
time, because the evidence is right there every single time, without a doubt. It's not a Days Gone stream without crashing your bike in the weirdest and strangest way possible. Like, how did you not see that? I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to listen to Dorito Crumbs 420. They're making fun of my hair, and then bam, crash. And so it's like,
See, I
oh.
don't have that excuse. I just crash the bike anyway, even when I'm not streaming.
Well, it's fun to do regardless. So I'm just telling you why I do it. Now,
Yeah.
normally I'm like a motorcycle superstar when I'm not paying,
Right.
when
Of
I'm
course,
paying
yes.
attention.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get that. Oh, but speaking of which, I'm trying to get that trophy where it says, like, I think it's the
Apocalypse
can you
burnout?
drift? It's something like you can drift for 4 seconds while you're on the nitro or nitrous. And that's a lot harder than I thought it was. I thought I had that figured out. And to this moment, I think like I started doing it by the beginning of December, and it's been almost a month.
You still don't have it?
I still don't have it because I don't know how to drift.
Okay, 2 tips. One, I realized this the other day that a lot of people don't know how the nitro works. I didn't the first time I played it. I'm used to games where you press the button to engage the nitro and it will go. Days Gone is different. You have to press and hold the button for nitro.
Oh.
So I think a lot of people maybe have that issue. That might be what's causing you problems.
That's me. I'm used to the classic press the button and it'll do it. Yeah, engage.
Yeah. No, this is press and hold. And then to do the drift, it's basically just turn and you'll just start skidding. The trick with the Apocalypse Burnout trophy is you have to have a large area in which to do it. I did it by somewhere in Hot Springs. A lot of people find it easy to do right outside Hot Springs, but I didn't have enough room there. That didn't work for me. But near where the house and the ambulance is, outside Hot Springs, that's somewhere a lot of people do it. You can also do it up by the farm, by Sherman's Camp.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to do. It. I don't know if I'm right, but I was under the impression that like a lot of the most area to do things like that was down south. I was doing it by where the militia area is, because I was like, okay, there's a big stretch of highway there. I think it's the I-95 area, and I was just like, let's do it.
Yeah, you need to go in kind of like a circle, like just a sort of large. Don't really tap the brake, just kind of go and turn and hit the nitro, and he'll just start skidding in a circle. Okay. Kind of doing donuts, basically doing a donut.
Well, I got the donut thing figured out. In fact, I think one of the first times I died from a horde was I was cocky, in a really cocky way. I was doing a donut. I was like, look at me, I'm doing a donut. Oh my God, 200 freakers just ate me. And I never did that again. That. And then also to sort of add insult to injury, after it reloaded, I think like one of the tips and tricks popped up, and it says like, watch out for noise, because any noise you make might attract anyone. And I was like,
tips and tricks, don't get eaten by a horde.
Yeah, don't do donuts, you fucking idiot.
In front of a horde. They
exactly. Well, I didn't know it was there. In fact, actually, one of the first
tips and tricks, watch out for hordes.
Yeah. When I first came across it, because I came into the game rather blind. I mean, all I knew was that you liked playing it. So I was like, all right, let's do this. When I first encountered my first horde, I think it was the train where the Nero, near where Copeland's camp is.
Death Train horde, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know the specifics of what that was or what a horde was, but I learned rather quickly what the fuck a horde was when I think, because one of the missions was reactivate the Nero station, and I was like, all right, whatever. But they don't tell you about the hordes, at least not at that part of the game. So I'm like, all right, let's do this. This guy in a motorcycle just was like riding through that area, and I was like, okay, I got this. Let me go get them. And he starts making noise, and then all of a sudden a big pile of freakers just come from the train, and I was like, what the fuck was that? And they see me and they start chasing me, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, I don't know what to do. And so that was my first introduction to the horde.
That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, because they do kind of fall out of those cars that are on the bridge above the road.
I don't know, because like I usually attack them at night, which is a strange thing that I do. Is like
I like that as well.
Yeah, because I want to know where they are and how big the pile is. But that first time when I wasn't aware of how it worked, they're the only ones as far as I know, like that area, because they're on top, they just start falling down. And I didn't get that vibe again until I think I saw the most recent Matrix. There's a similar thing going on where they just kind of fall and pile like that, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm getting flashbacks. I'm getting freaker flashbacks. No, 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 no." And that's the other thing. Playing this game as much as I have, I get like a Pavlovian response when I see like a red gas can. Just
Yep. I get it every time I pass a tow truck. I'm like, "Ooh, do I need gas?" I'll actually check the gas gauge and be like, "Do I need to get wait? I'm in real life. I can't just steal gas off the back of this tow truck."
I've noticed that that's a main criticism that we'll just call them haters, but a lot of them will say that I don't get the gas mechanic. And as a person who is always conscious about how much gas they have in their car, I was like, Deacon knows where it's at. It's like Deacon knows. I need gas, and it's even cooler. It's free. What are you talking about? Like, I'm paying through the nose for gas now. But in this world, you got to know where the gas is. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, I like it when I didn't realize for the longest time that you can get the gas straight from the gas pump, because that didn't make any sense to me. I was like, why would the gas pumps be on in the post-apocalyptic world? Like, they would be off, so I'd have to hunt around for the red gas cans. But I like it now when I roll up on the gas station and I'll pull up to the gas pump and I'll just wait just for a minute just to see who pops out, because they often lay ambushes at the gas stations, and I love it when when the marauders will run out and be like, "Get him!" and run at you, and I just like burn off or shoot him with the SMP-9 or something from the back of the bike, blow up a propane tank and take them out. My new favorite thing to do is using bear traps to catch humans, and then when one of their friends runs over to try to help them out of the bear trap, throwing a Molotov on both of them.
Oh,
that's my current favorite little nasty thing to do to the ambushes.
I mean, they're trying to kill you and steal your shit. As far as I know, that's an eye for an eye. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My current favorite thing to do is to, if applicable, they will be. I either get a freaker, usually a breaker, or I think the buff ones. If I'm not correct, yeah. So get the buff guy, the buff freaker, and have him follow me if I have to clear a marauder camp or something. And just have them, I'm like, you know what? Don't attack me. I'm going to drag you into these guys, so that when the marauders show, like when they start attacking, all of a sudden it's so cool to see how the, for lack of a better word, the AI, the NPCs, how they interact with each other. Because like usually, like if you're attacking one, they'll probably just wander off and go back to their area. That's not the case sometimes. As far as I know, like I'll have like a horde following me and they'll interact with the marauder camp. The marauder camp will stop shooting me and will deal with the with the horde, which is like my other favorite thing to do, because fuck them. That's why.
Yeah. No, that's one of my favorite things to
do. They'll stop attacking me and they'll start killing the horde, which helps me because it's like, Machiavellian kind of thing.
You can also use animals for that as well.
Okay, yeah, I will try that, because I feel really bad sometimes. I usually don't kill the animals unless they start attacking me. Like
but if you got a bear following you, you might as well, because the bears are pretty slow as well, so you can like leisurely drive up to the ambush camp and then burn out, and the bear will take over. The people will start shooting the bear, and the bear will go in and fuck them up.
But I feel bad like when I see the bears, like unless the game says like there's that part of the game where you're supposed to take deer meat. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll attack the deer meat because that's the objective. But in general, I don't like hunting the animals unless like the bear will start. If the bear notices me, I feel bad because I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, bear, I'm gonna kill you. Also, I'm gonna take your meat because I get camp credit that way. But but when they're infected, then all bets are off. Like, well, fuck you, Rager.
I just ignore them most of the time. Have you tried pulling freakers and hordes into Ripper camps?
No, but that sounds like fun, because if anyone really deserves a horde, well, actually, you know what? Technically speaking, they would love that, because they'd finally be validated. They're like, hey, we want to be just like you. Hey, they came over. Nice. Oh, I'm dead. That's
it's interesting what happens. I don't want to spoil it for you, but if you can get a freaker to get into a Ripper camp and just sit back and observe and use binoculars to keep your eye on the Rippers.
Do they? I'm just gonna guess because spoiling doesn't really. I'm not one to be ruined by a spoiler, but I'm going to assume that given the way they think, ideology wise, I would assume that they wouldn't do anything. They would just let themselves get ripped apart. Uh,
They drop to their knees and
oh,
start worshipping the freak.
nice. Well, yeah, that makes
And they
sense
just
because
like do this
yeah,
like little prayer pose or something, just kind of like humbled before, you know, their deity. And yeah, and they start. I can't remember what they say, but they say something.
probably
Um,
like, oh, thank goodness for freaks or
yeah,
something. I don't know.
praise the
Like I said, I've
freaks.
never seen it.
And
Yeah,
then the freak just is doing what the freak does and just comes up and starts slashing at them. And you're just sitting
yeah.
behind a wall or something watching this unfold, just giggling and laughing.
Being giggling like or just like like mesmerized like the kid from Jurassic Park when the T-Rex is eating that that scene where the T-Rex gets those bird dinosaurs and he's
Hmm.
like, oh, that's so cool, look at that blood, and you're just like, oh, okay, that's nice.
So, where can people watch your live streams?
They can find me on Twitch. The screen name is just Ritchie. Sorry, just underscore Ritchie. Ritchie, and the underscore, the symbol, not just writing it out loud.
So, JUST underscore
Underscore. All right.
RITCHIE.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the name I got. I got 60 days with the screen name until I decided to pick something else. But I think I feel like that's gonna stay because that's just my way of learning. Uh, you picked it, there it is. That's how it's gonna be. But
You
I
live
don't
with the
know.
consequences.
Well, for now, yeah, might as well because for future listeners, yeah, just underscore Richie.
All right, so let's get on to the topic. Now, this episode idea came about because you made a post on Instagram about the politics of Days Gone just after you'd finished a playthrough. Do you have a political science background?
Yeah, I graduated with a bachelor's at UC Riverside. Um, Shout out Tartans, hell yeah. Anyways, just had to do a shout out for the old alma mater. Um, in When I play video games, I have this thing in the back of my head where I just want, like, I love absorbing the lore of any game, and whether I'm playing Metal Gear, Resident Evil, or even Paw Patrol, like Special Forces assault game for kids, um, I'm always thinking about the sort of like the political analysis of what's going on. Because even if you're playing a kids game, there's always something going on there that, like, kids are smart, and you pick up these things. And so every time I play a game, especially with the company, when I found out that Ben Studios made Days Gone, I sort of like was like, hell yeah, dude, these guys did Siphon Filter. My little junior high school kid heart grew like 5 sizes when I found out that these were the same guys. The stun gun that you get,
Mm-hmm.
which that was a pain in the ass. There was one part that I was missing. Spent days going insane looking for it, and then when I found out where it was, because I gave up, I'm like, where is it? Oh, it was right under my nose the whole fucking time. That's great.
Which
But the
one was
stun,
it? Where was it?
it was the bridge next to. It's down south where the military is. I wish I was as good as locating maps like you and the previous guests. When I hear you guys talk about it, you guys know where everything is instantaneously. But for me, it's like it's down south, southern part of the map where there's marsh on the bottom
Oh,
right.
yeah, yeah, right at the very bottom.
Yeah, because that's where all those damn crows. Yeah, that's where all those damn crows are at. I hate those crows, but anyways, it's got like a swamp thing going on, and then there's a Nero station there, where there's a bridge. That's as far as I know in terms of recalling off the top of my head. But that's where the part was, and when I got it, the stun gun. It's a siphon filter stun gun, and so I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I put two and two together, and I was like, oh yeah. So as far back as I can remember, when I played a video game, Super Mario or whatever, I'm always thinking about the political ramifications of a game. So here we are.
we were talking just a little before we started recording about just kind of running through our talking points here, and you said that you read or you had the opinion that it was clear that Americans wrote the story for Days Gone. Can you explain that statement and elaborate a little bit, please?
We don't have okay. So Americans, it's not really a big secret or a mystery that Americans have this like unique reputation that the rest of the world has about us. In the end of 2020, I picked up Cyberpunk, and all controversy aside about the game, when you're playing the game, uh, the attitude that they have about Americans is like stereotypical. And what I mean by stereotypical, I don't mean like, oh, I'm really insulted. It's just like, it's clear that when they wrote it, it's like a European wrote the sort of character of what an American is, which is like guns, freedom, America, like as if like, and I'm not debating that that's wrong. I'm pretty on the left side of the spectrum when it comes to political uh, politics. So I would be the first one to also be like, yeah, that'd be some of them. But the idea of like simplifying it as that is it's a bit much. It's a reputation we certainly earned within the last couple of years. Not gonna lie. But with this game, um, when you sort of look at the characters, it's clear that Americans wrote it, and it's coming from a place of like complexity because your average person is not going to have these stereotypical things about their politics on their shoulder on their they're not wearing it as a badge. Some of them do, but in general you're not going to notice right off the bat how a person feels about ideology. It's only when you hang out with them and you hear them talk, or if in these days and age, how do you have a debate that doesn't end in people, insulting each other?
Mm-hmm.
But in general, if you're having a decent conversation or you're having a respectful one, um, you can kind of hear the subtlety and what they believe in a conversation. And this game really does that. And in doing my homework, I did come across this article from US Gamer from 2019 when the game first came out. They interviewed the creative director, John Garvin, and the interview was just basically like, um, because they're from Oregon, and Oregon has a history of being sort of like a hotbed for right wing militias. There was that famous thing that happened. I think I want to say 2016 or something with the Bundy farmers. They sort of like barricaded themselves in a plot of land because they felt
Right.
like because the government they felt like the government was taking too much from them with some sort of land claim or something. And within the year of 2020, with all the talk about political uh, unrest, with what had been going on with police and brutality, um, when you see the stories going up about the protests and the riots, the most famous ones that I saw in the articles were in the Oregon area. So this company, Ben Studios, really understood the sort of population that they were dealing with. They weren't specifically targeting all Americans. They were just dealing with what would happen if the world ended and you're in a place like Oregon and you're left with people who survived. What would that political landscape still be? And
Mm.
I think that's a really interesting thing. For what it's worth, I don't think they were trying to really tell you um, that this was bad. And I think what they're trying to do is like they're painting a picture, apocalypse, uh, and you have a bunch of people and what they believe in. Does politics still work in this environment? And the answer is sort of. It depends on where you're at. Depends on what camp you're in, what group you function with. And as you know, as you'll see as you play the game, for those who have or just listening because they're they just like listening to podcasts. If you do play the game, you'll notice right off the bat that they're very subtle about at the very least they're very subtle about how Deacon believes in things,
Mm.
because there's some characters like Copeland, yeah, conspiracy man. There's some people like Tucker that are like, okay, they're a hard ass, they worked in the prison. You got to be like tough as nails, so their political ideology is probably like conservative of sorts. Then you meet someone like Iron Mike, who that one's a little bit more complicated, but you get the feeling that like he's also leaning towards right, but at the very least he's very lenient about you can tell with like Ricky, like he doesn't have an opinion about Ricky in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like what her beliefs are, what she represents, who does she date and all that stuff. As long as they get the job done, they don't care. And it just kind of falls through the spectrum of each character. Those are just some examples, but
Yeah.
that's how I look at it. And with in terms of this, in terms of the game itself, um, I don't think you could have gotten that if like the game developers were from another country. That's not to say that they couldn't. It's just that when you see a game like Cyberpunk and their depiction of what they think America is going to be like in the future, and a game like Days Gone where they're trying to figure out how would a group of Americans in a particular part of the country would react, I would say that Days Gone does a better job at that.
It's like you said, it's so hyper specific that it's not America, it's Oregon.
Yeah,
It's
it's it. Yeah.
a specific rural part of Oregon as well. I mean, you can't get much more specific than that. You said that if someone from another country wrote Days Gone, it would be very different. I think if someone from another state wrote it, if it
True.
was set in
Yeah.
California, if it was set in Florida, if it was set in New York, if it was set, wherever you want to set it, it's going to be very different and very specific in this kind of way. And I'm really glad we're doing this episode and having this conversation, because I know I'm about to learn a whole fuck ton about politics and about Days Gone, because obviously, as a Brit, as someone who's never been to Oregon, there's a lot that I don't know about American culture, American politics, Oregon culture, Oregon politics. So I feel like we're going to get into some real cool, detailed
That's
stuff.
Well, that's true. I mean, I've only been up north for a tour for like 3 weeks, so I mean that's not enough to say that I know. But what I did experience over there when I saw the game, first of all, it's really neat. I was like, they got the whole forest thing down for sure. And as in terms of, you're correct, to sort of piggyback on that, yeah, I think that if a Californian were to write the game, I mean, it's a blinker and you miss it moment. But the only time I only felt like it made sense in terms of like, for example, I'm from like California, when the doctor in Wizard Island,
Mm-hmm.
when he describes what happened in L.A., I'm like, okay, yeah, yeah, that's exactly what that I felt that for like, it's a brief moment.
About the gangs coming together.
Yeah, the gangs coming together, and then it's like, okay, that kind of makes, I couldn't tell you with 100% certainty that that's exactly what would happen if we found ourselves in that situation. But the way he describes it, he's like, yeah, I'm from LA, this is what happened. And I'm just like, well, yeah, that's kind of how Californians would do it. Yeah, that's you sort of like good, you look at it and go, okay, yeah, I've been in LA, I've been there for a while, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben Studio's from Oregon. Who better than Ben Studio to talk about what goes on in Oregon? So it's
Yeah.
just like perfect. I liked
Yeah.
it. And so it shows in the game and within the interview itself that he did uh, John Garvin did with US Gamer. It's certainly, you can totally tell that at the very least they know who they were writing about.
Mm-hmm.
So and so it's very interesting. That I can say.
Yeah. All right, let's get into it. Let's go camp by camp. Let's start with Hot Springs, Tucker's
Let's
camp.
do it to it.
So I want to know how you define this, because I see it as like a dictatorship, a slave camp, very authoritarian. what is the correct term, or what could be a correct term for this kind of political structure?
Well, you hit it. Yeah, I mean, you knocked it out of the park when you said it. It's definitely an authoritarian situation. There's only one person in charge, and that person is Tucker. Um, what I found interesting about uh, not just hot springs, but just all the camps in general, this idea of like who's going to be in charge in your group, in your camp specifically, um, and who you find out is in charge of the camp. As I was playing it for the first time, you can kind of tell why, because who survived in, I think the game, I think in Hot Springs, there's a I think when you're in the golf cart the first time, I think Tucker's the one that says it, something like who survived. It's the tough guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's the criminals. It's the fucking assholes that stuck around.
Yep.
Um, and so those types of personality would be the ones who would, in an environment like that, if someone like that would tell you I'm in charge, and you don't have any experience of survival whatsoever, somehow you've made it, and all you want is safety, you will basically shrug your shoulders and go, okay, you're in charge. You seem to know what you're doing. And in the case of Tucker, the unfortunate aspect of it is that the only thing that Tucker knows is how to run a prison. So guess what? Your camp's a prison camp.
Mm.
And so yeah, you hit the nail on the head. If I remember correctly, Tucker wasn't a warden in the prison per se. I think she just worked in a prison.
Correct.
So this is a definite promotion for her, being essentially what I'm going to assume is she sees herself as like the ultimate warden in this prison camp. Now, they're not going to tell you it's a prison camp. It's just something you find out, either already because you're like Deke and you're feeding potential workers for the camp, or you're like in a situation like Lisa was, where you think you found salvation, you go in there, and then you find out right off the bat that things are not as what they seem,
Yeah.
and that's how you find out right off the bat. I believe with Tucker's camp with Hot Springs, there is a second in command. The name escapes me.
Alki.
Forgive me, Alki. Okay, forgive me. Second playthrough, it's just sort of going around. So Alki is second in command. And as far as I know the details, I think that's the only two well-known individuals that sort of run things. Obviously, Tucker is at the top. Alki is second in command, and everyone else just kind of does what Tucker says. And
Interestingly, I'm just going to interject for a
no,
second.
yeah,
So the relationship with Alki, Tucker is still very much in charge, but I kind of get the impression that Alki, he turns a blind eye to a lot of what happens, but he doesn't seem to really be necessarily in agreement with what's going on. You sort of almost get the impression that he maybe doesn't have as much power as he seems to have. He just seems to be kind of non-confrontational a little bit with Tucker and just sort of accepts her power.
yeah, he seems to be the only one that is allowed to be. I don't want to say the voice of dissent, but I kind of want to think that he's the only one that's allowed to sort of give her like a different opinion.
Mm-hmm. But she doesn't listen to it. That's kind of what I mean is
No,
like
no.
he does tell her at one point, like I forget the details, but he says something about, I think it's when they're talking about the dig,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and
Because
he's
he's
like,
yeah,
it's not going to work, and she's like, I don't fucking care, it has
yeah.
to work, it's going to get done, whether it takes all year, it's going to get fucking done. Like, what do you want me to do? Shut the
Yeah,
fuck up.
he knows the geology of the area. I think that's the
Mm,
correct way to say that. But he
yeah,
knows that this land that they're on is totally not uh, the right kind of land to farm. He says there's a lot of iron underneath, or he says that it's
I think
it's too it's too tough to dig into it. You
it's
need
like
like machines,
lava, what's the fucking term, lava rock
magma.
or
Oh yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah. Some kind of hard rock that you can't just pick at it.
Mhm.
8 hours at a time. You need either the machines, you need the tech for it, which they don't have, or the manpower, which they don't have. And so I don't. Yeah, I would say you're correct in the sense that he doesn't really hold any power, but for some reason Tucker tolerates that conversation. But I would also like to think that the reason why she tolerates it is because, yeah, I'm not going to listen. You can talk about all you want, but I'm not going to do it. I think she says something like, I don't give a shit, just fucking bring me men, or
Yeah.
something like, or bring me workers. Because she's also, for what it's worth, like what I noticed about the camps, uh, they don't seem to care who they get. It's just, can they work? And in that aspect, that makes sense, because the number one thing you want is how you're going to survive. I think that's one of the main aspects of what the creative director was saying, which was like, everything is tied to two things: surviving and making the world safer. And with Hot Springs and with Tucker only knows one way of doing things, and that's running a prison. And so you're going to treat, you do what you know, and you run the camp like a prison. And I think one of the things that struck me as interesting is that while you're roaming around the camp and you're just interacting with whatever the mechanic and Alkai and all this stuff, you kind of see how, and I'm sure you've mentioned this a lot in the other podcasts, you hear the dialogue, how the guards treat the workers or the camp members. They treat them really terribly, like, get to work or something.
They actually beat them. You see
yeah,
them
they beat
like
them.
beating people, and Deacon will actually comment on it sometimes.
Yeah, it's just like, just get. His reaction is never like
his reaction is like, "Hey, leave him alone."
Yeah, leave him alone. Come on.
Like,
they're gonna do it. Come on, you got this. I think I caught one where basically Deke is trying to make him feel better, but in a way that's like very disingenuous.
He says like, just work, just do what they want you to do, and you'll be fine.
Just do it, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And the other guy's like, fuck off, dude. I just got hit in the gut with an AK or whatever gun they're using.
Yeah.
It's just that's the power dynamic. There's one person in charge. That's me. There's no council. There's a second in command. As long as you do exactly as I ask you to, things will be fine.
Exactly as I tell you to.
Yeah, and there's an analog for that. It reminds me of like the structure in either the book or in the movie Starship Troopers. It's specifically the movie, because one of the guys in charge of his unit says like, I'm picking you to be in charge. You're it until you're dead or I find someone better. And I think that's the situation with Alkai. I think Alkai is a person that Tucker finds like, you're the best one out of all these idiots. And until I find a much better version of you or you die, it'll have to be someone else.
Yeah. Alkai does seem pretty smart, pretty intelligent, level-headed. Mostly, I mean, I'm not with Deacon, but for the most part, he seems pretty friendly. Not friendly, like overtly friendly, but like he seems like the sort of person you could have a conversation with. Maybe in like the old world.
Out of the two of them, yeah, I'd probably have a better conversation with Alkai than Tucker. Yeah. Tucker is like cynical as fuck,
Yeah.
Well, I think he says something like, what are you going soft on me, Deke? Or something like that. Like that idea of like, I'm hard as hell. I'm never going to not be hard as hell. And if I do break character, it's not going to be in front of anyone but myself.
Mm-hmm.
Which even then, I would think that in her own private moments, she would try to prison warden her way out of the blues or something.
Well, it's funny because you do find a collectible that shows that her husband committed suicide.
Oh, geez. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That definitely adds. That's what I love about this game. Like, there's always something that you find out either through the collectibles or through listening to your podcast. You mentioned like mission logs and the notes. I found I know it's got nothing to do with the politics aspect, but I found a lot of more a lot more complexity in how Sarah felt about realizing that Deacon's still alive through her notes than I did with the way they interact in the story proper. Because you can't really, I mean, it would be like a really terrible, I'm not a writer, but I would assume it's a terrible writing strategy to literally have the characters say everything all at once, how they think all the time. So you read the notes.
It's also very unrealistic. People do not act like that. People never are able to say what they mean. They get their words wrong, or it comes out wrong, or they forget, or, they can't articulate, or you sometimes just can't think quick enough in the moment. You know you want to say something, but you just can't get it out. You can't sort out your brain to like articulate. And that's what I love about those scenes, is that's what's happening. And you're right, it's after, when she's processing it and she's doing her little recordings for her work, that she starts to actually organize her thoughts. Holy fuck, Deacon's still alive. He's found me. He's here. I still have all these feelings, but I'm also trying to focus on this other thing. Oh my God, how do I sort this out in my head? Sorry to go completely off
No,
topic.
no, no. It's perfect because I'll tie it with it, because at the end of the day, it's about getting the job done. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I like that segue or whatever. Just connecting it
Yeah.
to the topic. Yeah, because they're trying to get the job done, and they don't have time for emotional things. Also, I like to think that it's probably assume, or it's probably like a known that I mentioned that this mentality of like, you're my second in command. Tucker doesn't say that, but it just seems like that's the idea. Like, you're in charge until you're dead or I find someone better. Part of me likes to think, and part of me likes to think that if Deacon was the type of person to have chosen a camp, and for some odd reason that he decided that Hot Springs is where it's at, you know for a fact that like Tucker is like, Deke, you're my new second in command. Alkai, you're third place or something.
Do you think that's why Alkai maybe doesn't like Deacon?
Well, at first I think that's what's going on, because I think that they've set that environment up to be like Alkai is like the most competent person, in the fact that Tucker doesn't treat again, it's Tucker, so it's hard to say like, is there a favorite? I don't know. I guess like for Tucker, the favorite would be the one that gets the job done.
Which is Deacon.
There's a couple of bounty jobs that you do when you finish them. I think there's like a couple references where like, I knew you'd get it done, or like, you know what, you're the one. I'd like, no matter what you, I don't know
I
the
believe she calls
verbatim,
him dependable or something like that at some point.
yeah, something like that. And
Yeah.
I didn't, for what I know, I didn't hear any kind of conversation where he's like, hey, you fucking bogarting on my job or something. No, I think they don't like each other in the beginning. You can tell. Also, when you get your camp trust up, then it's really hard to tell story wise how they feel, because once you max out your camp trust, I mean, Alkai talks to you like you're super friends when you max out. So I don't know, like, if that fits with the lore. I don't know if that's canon, that like the more trust you get in a camp, um, because by that measure, then everyone in that area, both in the northern part and the southern part, they just think Deacon's the coolest motherfucker that ever lived, especially when you max out all the camp trust. But as far as I can tell, in the beginning, he really doesn't much care for Deacon, but he respects him at the very least, because he knows he is a. I
I
mean,
don't know.
that's
I mean, the initial interaction between them is really fucking frosty.
no, it is
Deacon's like,
frosty.
yeah, and I think Alkai has a problem with him because he's a drifter. And I think that's the thing. Like
Okay,
when
yeah,
the trust gets up, it's like he's almost not a drifter anymore. He's kind of one of us.
yeah. You know what? I forgot to factor in that concept. The idea that he's a drifter, specifically, if there's any group uh, that he feels like he's a part of, it's the mongrels.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's that concept of like, I think Alkai says it too. He says something like, why the hell are you still wearing the colors? I think he's not the only one that asked that question, but he's like one of potentially two or three other characters. I think Ricky might have asked that question too. It's like, why are you repping the colors? And so, because since you mentioned it, thank you so much for bringing that up. Um, Motorcycle clubs, that in itself is a political statement. And the article that I keep mentioning, because it's like a really good article, they mentioned that it's kind of a reference to the Hells Angels. And early motorcycle clubs, based on the article, these are like World War II veterans who came back after the war that felt kind of like off, because obviously they're soldiers. They came back from the experience of war. I can't talk about that because I'm not a veteran, and I could never say that I know exactly what goes on in the mind of a veteran. But it seems like they felt like it felt like the feds, as they keep saying in the game, didn't really do much to help them afterwards. So they felt like the only people they could depend on were themselves, and the one percenter patch and all that stuff. I mean, we'll talk about that in terms of how that fits with the overall theme of libertarianism, because that's a big thing that happens throughout the game. It's not just one person that represents it. It's the whole vibe of the whole game, that has that bent. And the mongrels is like one of many examples of that idea of like, depend on yourself, depend on your brothers, depend on the crew, the group, the club. And I guess that makes sense because with Alkai, hey, I need you to be part of the group, but fuck you, you're not part of us. So as far as I know, if you're not one of us, you're one of them,
Mm,
and I don't trust them, So that's how I see it.
yeah. So I want to talk about two things with Tucker before we move on to the other camps.
Yeah.
So first of all, just an observation. It's interesting that with Tucker's camp, you don't accrue trust from sending rescues and hostages to her camp.
Oh, I didn't
Which
know
I think
that.
is, yeah, which I think is really interesting. When you rescue the people out of cars, or you rescue them from like the roadside where they've been held
Oh,
by
yeah, 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 yeah. Some people get money and trust. Some people only get trust. Yeah, you're right. Hot
hot
Springs
springs, you
only
never
gives
get
you
any.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just get money.
I just think that's really interesting how it's like Tucker she doesn't give a shit. It's commerce. I don't fucking
Yeah, do
trust
your
you because
job. Yeah,
I mean,
you're
also,
doing a job.
you're sending me a slave. How does that make you trustworthy? Like, you just basically stabbed this person in the back. In a way, I don't think she would see it like that, but it's just interesting that you don't get trust from that. But I want to quickly run through as well how Tucker holds all the power, and we talked a little bit about this already with the armed guards and the beatings.
Yeah, a strong armed presence similar to a prison environment. That's
Mm-hmm.
usually that's how I interpreted how Tucker was able to do it. As I said before, in terms of who gets to be in charge, I think just Tucker, just the fact of the matter is that they had just the attitude to be in charge, and the second thing was having the guards believing, because you got to believe someone's in charge, and they just have the guns. Whoever has the guns has the power in this environment. So
Mm-hmm. And then
um
there's also the question of how do you keep your goons, your employees who are keeping everyone working. How do you keep them loyal or in some way willing to keep going along with this? Because you got to kind of worry at some point that someone's going to start having a little bit of a moral self-questioning at some point. If your job is to walk around with a gun beating people who aren't working hard enough, at some point someone's going to question that and be like, should I be doing this?
yeah, you run a risk of two things in this like authoritarian situation. You run the risk of two potential outcomes in terms of your tenure uh, as a leader is in jeopardy, and they all have the same thing. But since we're talking about Hot Springs, um, you run the risk of having, because she's treating it like a prison, you run the risk of a prison riot,
Mm.
and that's something that I'm sure Tucker has calculated in their head. And the solution to a prison riot in terms of the workers is to have the armed guards, handle. But what you're saying is, how do you keep the armed guards happy? And in that sense, that part isn't really insinuated in the game. But I would have to say that from a practical standpoint, you'd have to give these guys perks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they don't really describe the perks, but I would assume that if you're an armed guard and you do what she asks you to do, which is to, and well, essentially oppress the shit out of these people, you probably get better food, more food. You don't have to worry about food. You got a place to sleep. You have some kind of influence. I mean, I'm basing it on Iron Mike's camp, with Schizo and his security goons. There is a sense of like, if you do what I tell you to do, you will get rewarded. As to what they get rewarded, I don't know unless I completely missed it in because I don't really hang out. I didn't hang out in Hot Spring Camp as much. It was like the least
Pretty
place to
much
be.
never hung out there until
Yeah, it
recently
was the least
doing
place, unless
research.
it was doing the Lisa stuff, and or if I just needed to get like it was just a place where I just went in there. I sort of looked at the ground. This is what I do when I have to go somewhere that I don't want to go. I just pop in, I look on the ground, I ask what I need to do, I do it, and I walk away, and that's it. I try to avoid hearing the noises of the poor bastards that are getting hit by the guns, and I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, see you later, bye. So, so I would assume that the armed guards or whoever's part of Tucker's like security crew, because let's face it, I'm sure that there's only one portion of her camp that she really gives a shit about, and that's security detail. Trying to ensure that it's safe, yeah, okay, they all do that. Trying to ensure that no one leaves, that's probably number one on the list, besides making sure that the camp is safe. So you
Mm-hmm.
definitely need a group of people to do that. And you definitely need a group of people that are happy doing that. Because you're right. I probably at some point, sooner or later, would have to ask myself, unless you're okay with it, but sooner or later, you're going to have to ask yourself, like, how long can I keep doing this before it starts affecting me? So, that's the question right there.
Yeah. So one thing I've mentioned on the podcast before is this theory that Tucker uses comfort women, sex slaves, whatever you want to call it, prostitutes, however it may be structured. And it's very much a theory that is not mentioned in the game or really kind of even really alluded to. But when you start to break it down, as we are doing, of like how Tucker would hold all the power, what are those perks she has to give the security detail? How do you keep them happy? What is a basic human need aside from security and a place to sleep and food? I mean, it's sex. It's a very powerful tool to be used when you're trying to control people. And I mentioned on the podcast before this theory that there are sex noises that you can hear in hot springs. One of the things that the game does is it doesn't really deal with the sort of darker side of the apocalypse in terms of rape and sexual assault. The game purposefully, I think, kind of alludes to the fact this is going to exist in this world, but doesn't really ever talk about it. There's only a couple missions, I think, which really sort of insinuated that that's what's happening, and it's never overt. But Spornicus Rex had said that he had been in the camp one time and heard undeniable sex noises. And it's weird that it's in Hot Springs, not in Lost Lake or Copeland's camp or any other place. It's in Hot Springs, which is the least sexy place to be.
No,
If
yeah,
you are
definitely.
if you are there as a worker, you're going to be too tired to do anything. You're beaten and you're practically starved, and you have to work from dawn till dusk. You're not going to be having fun times after dark. So the theory could be that Tucker is using some of the women in the camp maybe as sex slaves to keep the goons satiated. It's been a kind of ongoing question, both on the podcast and on the live streams that I do with Rex. A lot of people saying, no, it's not real, it's not true. There's actually a hospital triage, like a medical infirmary, right next to the camp, where all the tents are. And everyone's like, no, it's groaning from that. It's not. You're just a perv. It's not sex noises. It's the moans and groans from injured people in the triage unit.
I can see. Well, I can see the both sides of the story. I haven't really seen or have done actually the work to get that noise kicked in the game.
Well, I can confirm I heard it the other day. I was playing it
Oh,
just a couple days ago. It's definitely sex noises. Absolutely, unmistakably sex noises.
that makes sense. You were mentioning that on the stream the other time. You were like, I
Mm-hmm.
know the difference, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
Because
certified, certified.
you can hang out by the infirmary. People do make little groans and moans, and it's like, well, okay, maybe that could be mistaken for sex noises.
Yeah.
But this one, what I heard, and I was actually, it was during a cutscene when you drive around the golf cart with Tucker, and she does her little speech, telling you about the camp and everything, and and we drove through the campsite, and undeniable sex noises coming
Okay.
from one of the tents. And unfortunately, I tried to record the video, and it doesn't let you record the cutscenes. It
Yeah,
didn't. It
that's
didn't capture
always
it.
that's the part of the when you try to get the proof on it and you're like, oh no, I can't do it.
It's like trying to get a picture of Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's always when they're about to leave does the camera work all of a
Right.
sudden. Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to bring it up because, we
Yeah.
talked about it before, and there's a lot of like, well, I don't know, that sounds like a bit of a stretch. Like, I don't know if that's too kind of too dark for this world, a little too serious. But I can confirm there are sex noises coming from Hot Springs, and like I said, Hot Springs does not sound like or seem like the kind of place where you would be having fun in that regard.
No, not for the I keep not for the people that are actually doing the work, not the
Mm-hmm.
campers. I'm
Right.
gonna start calling them campers now. Unfortunately,
Unhappy campers.
unhappy campers. That's not the camp you want to go out and have a good time. Yes. Not to make. I mean, I'm not definitely not making light of the situation, but I will say this: in this game, no, they're not going to make it dark. But unfortunately, it is a possibility that does happen in a place like that,
Mm-hmm.
because that would, I mean, that is a situation where it's even though Tucker uh, is the one in charge, Tucker knows who they're dealing with. They're dealing with dudes, and unfortunately, I mean, it is a situation that presents itself in the game, because there's two situations in the game. They're subtle about it, but there's the situation where you're helping Ricky find the twins, and
Mm-hmm.
when you're
Yeah.
piecing together what happened as to why they're one of the twins is dead and there's a dude on the bed, bled to death or something. It depicts the picture of like, oh, he was about to do something really fucked up to her, and she took him out and he took her out, and that's what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was the inference of Ricky's like, no, Deke says, why does Addie have such a fucking strange, to him it's strange, but why does Addie have such a strong attitude? Was it Addie or is it Ricky? He makes a mention in the dam, like why do you two hate Schizo so much? And she mentions, oh, he was perving on us. And Deke's like, oh, geez, fucking Schizo. And I also was like, oh, Schizo, you greasy fuck. I discovered the Polaroids after I decide to ride with Iron Mike so he can show me the path to go south. For some reason, for the first time, I discovered all the huts, or
Mm-hmm.
all the cabins or something.
Yep.
And I came across Schizo's cabin, but I didn't know it was his until I picked up the item of the Polaroids, and I was just like, "Oh, Schizo! Oh, jeez! Oh, you greasy fuck!"
Yeah. They're
It's just
kind of
like,
hard to see, but if you do
no,
go
but
into
you
photo
can,
mode, you can see that one of them at least is. It's not clear who it is, but it's like a woman getting
yeah.
undressed.
But
She's.
as a guy though, when you see a skeezy Schizo, I don't know why they don't call him that in the game, but as a guy, when you see any Polaroid and you're by yourself and you see that and you're just like, oh, you poor bastard. It's just like, Jesus Christ,
Yeah. There's also 2 points at which it talks about, or the game insinuates the sort of.
Sexual assault and basically the imbalance of power between men and women in that situation.
There's a third one. I believe, I forget her name.
Oh,
Crystal.
the prisoner.
Yeah, in the militia camp, the girl who has all the face tats and
She wants her rings back, or they take her. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
When you go and, because you go and find her twice, and I forget which time it is, but she's basically, there's a group of guys who have obviously captured her and have very obvious intentions what they're going to do with her, and I think she stabs one of them, or
you think you're gonna save her, but in actuality she already saved herself, and you walk in,
she's
you're actually
badass.
more afraid you're actually more afraid of her killing you, as opposed to like, because he goes in there guns blazing like, all right, I got this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the guy that with the AWOL guy,
right?
That's the one that Deacon sort of roasts the captain. saying, "Oh, that's your guy, right?" And he's like, "No, that's not our fucking guy. Like, fuck that guy. He's breaking the rules left and right." But yeah, he that's the third one.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
Thanks
so it
for
is in the
mentioning
game,
that.
but really only 3 instances. And I don't think it needs more than that, because we all know that this would happen in a post-apocalyptic world. You don't need to overtly state it. But yeah, it's just interesting that they have the noises in Tucker's camp. And I just think that
Specifically, yeah,
that
I'm
indicates
thinking,
it's a fourth instance of sexual assault, not, oh, it's just some people hooking up in a tent because
yeah, if I
what else are
remember
they going to
correctly,
do?
you mentioned throughout the podcast that like sex is like probably low on the list of things. And they don't specify like camp life. I heard like a couple of stories with other like NPCs. Probably there's one, if I might be correct, in Lost Lake. There is like an NPC, like a lady who talks about like getting busy or something, and then the story ends with like, and then the freakers happen or something. And I think like the
Oh,
moral, I
I
think the
heard that.
moral this, I heard a conversation, but if I remember correctly, I learned that the moral of the story, even then, before you specify that like having sex is like the last thing you want to do, because
Mm,
you know you don't want to get caught literally with your pants down with the freakers. Um, so I would have to assume that no one's got having sex in the brain in that realm.
hmm.
So, but also you're right. The game would probably take a not that it's a bad thing, because I think you should be aware that a situation like that does happen. Historically, there are examples of comfort women in times of war, or not even times of war, just in general. There's a long history of oppressive regimes resorting to this type of terrible behavior to ensure loyalty to the guards. And
Hmm.
I mean, real talk. I wouldn't put it past Tucker to use that
Also,
as a strategy to appease the men, because like you know they need to be like I'm not whatever. Like I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. But I will say that that is definitely something that happens.
hmm.
They don't mention it in the game, but that doesn't mean that that's not a thing that could happen.
And
So
also,
you know.
not to get too dark with this, but
Oh,
if you're
go ahead,
talking,
because I love dark, cynical. You know, I really do. Yeah, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, in terms of, if you're bringing people into the camp, every person you bring into the camp is a mouth to feed. So they have to provide more value to you than the cost of keeping them.
Yeah, you have to make sense. Yeah.
So if you're bringing in, these, she mentions at one point that she has, the people who are sort of running it, or her armed guards and whatnot, are the criminals and the bad elements and the people who can take care of themselves. Those are the people that she elevates to a position of power, the or relative power, the armed guards and the security. And then the rest, she refers to the other people who come in as weak and cowering and looking to me to feed them. And it's like, okay, so you're bringing people in, you're making them work. That's the trade-off. But not all of them. I mean, someone like Lisa, well, what real work can she do? She's a teenage girl. She's not particularly strong.
No, it would be a waste of time to have her, you know, go in there and try to do what
Try to
they
swing an
expect her to
axe or
do. Yeah.
something to cut through the bedrock. So again, like I said, not to get too dark, but like, what value could someone like Lisa bring if she
Yeah.
can't work in the fields? Put her to work in the tents.
Yeah. And I completely agree. Like I don't want to shy away from it. I mean, there's a part of me that does, because it's an uncomfortable feeling realizing someone like Lisa finding herself in that situation. But the unfortunate truth is that that type of thing happens all the time,
Mm,
especially in that power dynamic where you find yourself in a situation where it's either safe in here or the freaks. And if you know, you said that Tucker said like, oh, they're cowardly and they expect things to be safe and stuff, and the sort of idea, it's like they want me to provide all this stuff for free. No, nobody gets this for free.
mm-hmm.
And you got to put in your work. And like you said, the unfortunate thing is that like not everybody can be a worker. You can work, but there are different types of work.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's a sad state of affairs if you really think about it. But it's something, you know, it's a thing that does happen. There's precedent. There's historical references. One off the top of my head is the real life situation where Japan and Korea, they have a frosty diplomatic relationship, and it has something to do with what happened in World War II, where Japanese soldiers were using Korean women as comfort women,
Mm.
and that's a thing that totally happened. And so um, I feel like I'm just kind of like looping around the topic of it. But the thing is that that is a thing that happens. Is it happening in the game? Um, if you come across the what you're describing, the noises, yeah, then I would say that it if you had heard that, then you would have to think twice about the situation. But even if you hadn't heard the noise that everyone keeps talking about, the what did you refer it to as confirmed sex noises?
Yes.
Yeah,
Undeniable
confirmed.
sex
Yeah,
noises.
undeniable
Undeniable
sex
sex
noises. Yeah,
noises.
but that is a thing that happens because
Hmm.
you you wanna survive, just as the game developer says. Is like that's the theme. What do you do to survive?
Mm.
What do you ensure to make that happen? And that's not just in general. That's like, what does Tucker do to make that happen? What do the guards make that happen? And the unfortunate thing of the sad campers that have to deal with that fact. And the choice is, if that does happen, you got two choices: keep being oppressed like that and having to deal with really terrible, disgusting things, to continue being safe, to continue being fed. And in that camp of Hot Springs, that is the environment that Tucker presents to everyone. You either do what I tell you to do, or you're not here. And yeah, that is the well for Tucker, she sees that as the benefit of the system. This system only works if you do what I tell you to do. What is she trying to achieve? Uh, she's trying in her head, because no one sees themselves. Well, I don't know. Maybe Tucker sees herself as a badass, but I would see her as like a terrible person.
She
Um,
sees herself definitely as the only person who understands what's got to be done.
yeah, in a sort of Few Good Men kind of thing. You know, that movie where Jack Nicholson's character says something similar of like, you I do what you don't want to do to ensure the freedom and all that stuff, all that bullshit that
Yeah.
that type of person would say. Like, I'm just trying to maintain stability, I'm trying to maintain safety, I'm trying to maintain everything. All I'm asking you to do is to give away your freedom. so
Yeah.
do what I say and you stay alive. But you know, based on what I remember in doing the missions and seeing how Lisa progresses, it would seem that Lisa had the right way of thinking, which is get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, whatever it takes, just get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Copeland's camp. You mentioned earlier, you used the word libertarian to describe how all of the camps kind of deconstruct aspects of libertarianism. Copeland's, I feel like, is the one that I would actually describe as maybe libertarian in its political ideology. There's also with the strong anti-government themes and a lot of conspiracy theories
Yeah,
mixed in there.
he's the I mean, game comes out in 2019, so that means I'm just playing like I know how long it takes to make a game. But I would assume that when the game came out in 2019, they had at least the last 5 years in their head, the way things were going politically within our country, or
Mm.
within America. So you know, the rise of Alex Jones, Infowars. That's like the one off the top of my head. These commentators that are like insinuating that the government's not in your best interest, which is like inherently like a very American thing. Even back then, when America was first founded, there's always this idea of like, well, we fought the British so that no one could tell us what to do. I'm sort of like simplifying it because like this would just be a 5-hour podcast when like throwing in the jams, the politics jams. But that idea of like we fought our oppressors because we want to do things our way, and we hate it when people tell us what to do. And so even if that means the government is telling us what to do, the very same government that's in our best interest, this is how they think. The conspiracy theorists, like even they're out to get you. So the only one that can handle it is like you, the individual that knows what's going on. Oh, I'm going to do the accident. I'm going to do the Alex Jones, like catch him in bed with a goblin or whatever the hell is going on. But to make it serious, I'm going to put on my political science hat right now. There, you can see it.
Yep,
Go.
Looks good. Suits
there you go. Okay, so Copeland, yes, he is like, he's one of the characters where he definitely, you can look at him and hear him. Once I heard his like Radio Free Oregon, or I think that's I think that's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
I knew right off the bat what they were trying to do with this guy. This guy is like, this is his. People call it an apocalypse. This guy calls it paradise. If I was a guy like Copeland, who under normal circumstances was like, this is gonna happen. The government, man, they're out to get you, man. Holy shit, man. And then this happens. Yeah. And then this happens.
He's right.
I would go, if I was that type of character, I would be going around up and down that camp and going like, I told you, motherfuckers. Yeah. Every day. I would be like, I'm sure that Manny is just the guy who's the mechanic. He's probably sick to death hearing I told you so.
He does not give a shit about
no he politics. Doesn't. I'm just so sick to death. So one of the missions when you're in Wizard Island is like you get to hear the colonel do his sermons. Mm-hmm. You better believe that it's probably not as organized as the colonel's sermons, but you better believe that Copeland is a nonstop walking talking sermon where he's just like, we get it. The government sucks. There's no government, yet you keep talking about it. Just shut up, you know? And so that's him. He wears that idea. He wears that that particular characterization about Copeland distinctively. Like, you know, he's a crazy crackpot conspiracy guy. It's unfortunate that it's unfortunate that what happens to the world is exactly what he's been pining about for the last who knows how long. You know, he's a prepper. He's a real Dale Gribble. Yeah. You know, but at least Dale Gribble is like has a better personality than he does, you know.
With the term sovereign citizen or sovereign state, isn't that a sort of political ideology that maybe he would fall under?
I don't know. I mean, so let me because I wore on the hat here. So the concept of being a libertarian in the most basic form is someone who advocates maximizing individual rights and minimizing the rule of the state, and also one who believes in free will. So a guy like Copeland, and based on when I would go in there, he's the guy in charge, which is kind of ironic when you think about it. You know, the guy who's been sort of screaming in your ear about how the government's taking over and controlling how you function.
The authority is trying to control you, but listen to me, I am the authority.
Yeah. It's just like that's, you know, if Copeland says that's what they want you to think, and then I would just be like, you know what, aren't you they? You know, mm-hmm. And then he'd have like a moment of like, oh, well, no, I'm different. You know, like I you know,
the hypocrisy with Copeland is very rich. It's very strong. There's a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of double standards. You kind of have to search to see. It's not like with Tucker, with the slaves that have been a slave camp. The hypocrisy in Copeland's camp is there, but you do have to kind of work for it. Because he has that whole idea of like, well, it's, you know, freedom from the tyranny of government. But he, like you say, he is in charge. He steals Deacon's bike. He tries to steal Boozer's bike. He has this whole little speech at one point about basically taking what you want and fuck everyone else. Break the law because fuck the law. You know, there's a line where it's like he wants you to listen to him, and he wants to be in charge, but he's also anti-authority, anti-government, anti-control, and it's very much a double standard.
It's a real half-ass operation. Like you can see that it is. I mean, I don't know, call me crazy or whatever, but I look at when you look at the other camps, Hot Springs, because we just mentioned it a bunch of times, but like Hot Springs is well organized, well oiled, not great place, but it's highly organized.
Hmm.
Lost Lake, same thing. Obviously, Wizard Island with the
The
DCM,
militia. Hmm.
the militia, it's highly organized because they have a sense of like, we need organization, we need this. Copeland is like the kind of guy who sort of, it reminds me of like when I was in eighth grade, we had this like honors US history class, and we were learning about the Revolutionary War, and through some weird ass way, the teacher, was trying to get us to understand the idea of being oppressed by like a government. I swear, this is not like an anti-British thing. I swear,
No, you're all good. It's
that's
fine.
just
I'm
classic
half
American.
American. I'm
Oh, well,
dual citizen, so.
you're one of us now, brother. So that's how that works. But like the idea is that like they were trying to inherit this idea of we hate this government. Let's stop doing this. Okay, cool. So what are we going to do? So Copeland reminds me of like what we were back then, which was like, okay, you revolted, you did your thing, you're now in charge. Now what? And the idea is like, well, I didn't plan that far ahead. I was just at the part where I was telling people what I would do. And now that time comes, and Copeland like is, other than the fact that, again, most of the people that are in charge of the camps, he somehow found himself with the power to do so. He's got the guns, he's got the group, he's got the crew, he's got the guards on his side. A lot of people see him as the person in charge. What I would say the difference between Copeland and the other camp members is because the other people don't know what else to do. Like he is the only one that wants to be in charge. Sort of
Mm.
like what do you call it? Someone who I encounter this all the time, like with the bros in my area, where they want to be a number one. They want to be the tough guy. Oh, you know what? Someone like Trump. Trump wants to be president. He keeps telling everyone what a cool president he's going to be. Okay, great. You just got elected. Now what? And then 8 years later, you're sitting there going like, well, what did you fucking do? You know? And he'll tell you, well, I did this. I was looking out for the little guy and all this stuff. And you're sitting there going like, you know what? This is my political thought on it. Like, you have to ask your presidency. And it's kind of funny that like that's how Copeland is presented, as a guy who spouts out these conspiracy theories. Like this is fake. This is he doesn't talk like Trump, but he definitely would represent the type of person who's on the fringe of society, that they're
Mm.
like, you know, fluoride, that whole conspiracy theory and all that stuff. Like I'm trying not to be polarizing or anything, but like those are some of the things that get mentioned a lot within this group of people. Also, I feel bad because the political ideology of being a libertarian doesn't necessarily mean that you are 100% all about conspiracy theories. It's just that for me, it's like, if you're constantly thinking about the individual, your own personal rights, you feel like you have a better idea of what's good for you, as opposed to um, what you think the state should tell you. Like a good example of that would be the government decides it is illegal to drive your car without having a seatbelt. You know, there's that law.
Hmm.
And the libertarian viewpoint would be like, why would you make that illegal? Like, shouldn't you be able to have the common sense of knowing that, you know, if I feel comfortable not wearing a seatbelt in the car, that should be on me. Now, common sense would tell you that a seatbelt is important because, you know, if you get into a car accident or anything, the seatbelt's going to help you. But for a libertarian in its basic form, would have to at least question, why is it so important for the government to tell me and thus pass a law that would give me an infraction, in terms of like, I would get pulled over and I would be seen as like, hey, that's not a real civil thing to do, not going around with your seatbelt. That's like the most basic way of looking at it. But for Copeland, that idea of like thinking for yourself, that's good when it's just you. But if you're in charge of a camp, that's not good for the camp.
Mm.
Um, Based on, and I don't know if this was a choice that was made by the sorry, developers, um, because Copeland's camp is like in the forest. Like it's not fixed. Like it's not in a already set up area. Like if
They've
I'm
got the
not
little
mistaken,
Ewok village going on.
yeah, they got Endor. They don't have like they didn't go and find like Hot Springs looks like some kind of resort that they found.
Yes, it is. It is, and it's also Hot Springs has a river running on one side and cliffs on the other. There's literally only that bridge to get in and out. It is
Yeah,
very well protected.
and that's why I'm thinking Copeland's camp is kind of like it represents the half-assery. Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
a word. I'm going to use that.
No, no,
I'm going to
totally.
half-ass words myself, but that kind of is like a reflection of his half-ass attitude, where it's like I'm in charge, but I'm going to do the bare minimum because their location is weird. Maybe it represents their his idea of being so far removed from society that they're literally in the forest, like kind of like a real Fight Club idea of it.
Mm.
um, but this idea of like he's gonna go and he's gonna handle it in the only way he knows how, and unfortunately it's a very limited it's a very limited way of handling society for him.
It's also
um,
interesting you mentioned that he kind of half-asses his power. The first mission you get for him is to go to the ambush camp up on the hill. And the purpose of the mission is to turn on the radio tower, to fix the radio tower so he can do his
that's true.
broadcasts.
That's true. He's not even in. There's no strategical reason to have that except for
Yeah,
he wants his
he just
stupid
wants to
radio show
broadcast
back on.
his show. But interestingly, while you're there's two things. That first of all, it's an ambush camp. Like people have broken away from Copeland's camp and set up an ambush camp at the top of the hill, like pretty close to his camp. They're gonna fuck up his people and steal his shit. And that's not your concern. Your concern is the radio tower. And secondly, you overhear a conversation between two of those guys. If you hang out in the bushes and listen, two of the guys are talking about how they know, because they were from Copeland's camp and they broke away. They've gone AWOL or whatever, and they stole some fish. And the reason they stole it, they killed someone and stole some fish because Copeland had been rationing the food.
Hmm.
And it's like Copeland doesn't care about any of that, and he's like fucked up the rationing so that somebody gets killed and all this food gets stolen, and then these people leave and they go set up an ambush camp just at the top of the hill, which is a strategic advantage over Copeland's people. But no, Deacon, don't go kill him for any of those reasons. Go get my radio mask back on.
He's definitely got his priorities on right when he definitely does. I mean, and that's the I mean, and in essence, when you have that mentality, you're essentially that doesn't really give much confidence for the campers that are there. Um, some, like I said before with Hot Springs, they're there because they really don't know what to do, and there's no real other than that one mission where you have to go rescue Manny. And if I'm correct, he sends Manny, who is probably the only one who knows how to fix bikes. He's the mechanic, he's everything, but somehow they send him to go do something else. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't, even the colonel's like, I'm not sending the doctor to do a run, even though he wants to. Like, he's a very valuable asset. Like, we can't have our valuable assets doing weird ass stuff. What if they get hurt? What if they get
Mm-hmm.
killed? Like, poor Manny. What would have happened if he became, if he died or something? Like, who else is gonna go and fix that? Who's gonna help him steal the bikes?
Yeah.
Who's stealing the bikes? Not
Yeah.
Manny. Maybe the other guy named Zanny. That's something I've noticed. Is there a
Zanny
connection
and
between?
Manny.
Is there a connection between them? Like, I kind of there
Don't
was.
think so, but
I'm like derailing this, but that always weirded me out. That
mm-hmm.
you had a guy in one camp who works on bikes. His name is Manny. There's another guy out there who runs bikes. I think it's Hot Springs, right? Zanny works in Hot Springs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it
And then
always
is it
weirded.
Buzz in Lost Lake? Is that his
Yeah,
name?
and it didn't make sense because I was thinking like, well, why didn't they just go all out, like the rule of threes, and just call the guy in Lost Lake Danny? Manny, Zanny, and Danny. That's
The
it
three
works
brothers who
out.
grew
Yeah,
up
the
in a
three brothers.
like maybe their dad was a mechanic or something, and that's how
Yeah,
they all
it's or
learned
maybe it's
about
some
that.
kind of cool like mechanic brotherhood thing where like you just the Annie is there and you just add in the letter, kind of like
Oh no,
Pokemon,
you take the first name, the first initial, and add Annie to the end. So you would be Ranny, I'd be
Oh yeah,
Clanny.
yeah. Whoa, Clanny. Whoa, there you go. You'd fit right there with the old Copeland camp there. No, I don't think they're right. That's that's the other thing I noticed. There's concepts of there's things that are like polarizing in our society right now, and the doctor in the I forget his name, but the doctor in the Wizard Island camp says the same thing.
Jimenez.
Jimenez, yeah. He says that when the Freakers came, everybody joined up. Didn't matter who we were, what we believed in, or anything. All we wanted to do was kill the freaks. So things like that, like racism, I'm sure it still exists. I'm still that's prevalent, sexism and all that stuff. But I think it takes a back burner when it comes to wanting to survive, which is politically speaking, like you wouldn't have a group. Uh, it's possible, but if you found yourself in a situation where like if you're specifically setting parameters like this is an all white camp or something like that, unless you like found yourself with a pretty good crew, I highly doubt it, because at that point you're wanting to survive. You're not sitting there to make sure that your ideologies are being fulfilled or something like that. But that's just something they don't really talk about it in the game. Kind of like with the whole sexual assault thing, they don't bring it up, but I would imagine that I would have loved to have had some kind of reference, but that's just me,
Yeah.
like especially in the prison camp, because that definitely is a thing when you're in prison. They separate themselves through race and class and all that stuff, but that's neither here nor there. And we already talked about Hot Springs, so.
So interesting thing that I noticed about Copeland's camp is that it's named Copeland's camp. He has an ego. He's like, I want my name splashed up on there on the sign.
It's his camp, It belongs to him. Ain't nobody else that runs it. That's true. I just didn't realize that until as I'm like reading it. Yeah, Copeland's camp. Ain't nobody else's.
Yeah. Got to have his radio show going. Got to have his name above the door.
Kind of makes you think, how did it fall apart the first time? I think I don't think that was a natural occurrence. I think if I missed out on something, like, says, go help me turn on the radio. But do they mention how it stopped working the first time?
Yeah, the guys in the ambush camp destroyed it because they were pissed at Copeland.
Well, I mean, who's the real hero then? Is it Copeland, or is it the people that said, shut the fuck up?
Yeah. Which can be you in the game. Every time Copeland's on the radio and he's like, yeah, not today, Copeland.
Well, the first run, I definitely heard them all, because obviously I wanted to listen to what they're saying.
Same.
Second time around, skip.
Yeah.
Skip. Totally skipped it.
No Copeland, not today. So what do you think are some of the benefits of Copeland and the way he runs his camp in this world?
Well, the benefit is
it's not Tucker's camp.
It's not Tucker's camp.
You're not slaves. It is, because they just have that thing of like, people can leave. You can leave Copeland's camp. It's nose down, work hard, they feed you.
Yeah, they feed you. But the sort of secure. Well, when I mean security, I mean like not just like the security of the perimeter, making sure that they're safe, but also like the idea of like feeling secure within the camp. It's kind of 50-50, because if you happen to get sick there, I can't imagine Copeland's camp's like the best place to be when you're sick, because there's no reference of doctors or anything there. There's a place where you buy supplies. There's the bounty guy. No, not bounty guy. Bounty girl.
Mm-hmm.
I like her too.
She's
real. Yeah. She's like, hey, you're going to take me with you or what? And he's like, hell yeah. Yeah. You know it. Going up north, I believe is. Yeah. But there's no reference of anyone specifically. It's him and Manny in terms of story wise. There's two people that you deal with. And all you really know about them is that, for me, it's like, oh, this is a real half-ass operation. And the second thing is they stole your fucking bike. And one of the things that I noticed playing the game was because I played a lot of Witcher 3 in the early 2021. So when the choice comes with go get me my drugs, and the choice is pick one of the camps.
I was just going to ask you which one you took them to.
I took them to Copeland because I was under the impression I was under the impression that they were going to give me back something that resembled my original bike, because his whole thing is like, yo, that gas tank was the tank that my dead wife gave me. And so the way Copeland sort of convinces you, he's like, well, if you give it to us, I'll see what we can do to help you get back the parts you need.
Not, we're going to give you your bike back. It's like, well,
Yeah.
maybe I'll see what I can do. Maybe there's a couple bits lying around that I might let you buy. Like, fuck you, Copeland.
Yeah, which now that I think about it in hindsight, I'm thinking that's just something he said so that he can convince you to give you the drugs. Totally. Because there's no doctor there. As far as I know, I was thinking maybe like, oh, this is like Witcher, like every choice you make makes a decision or something. Now I realize I just got bamboozled,
Yeah.
Tucker says like, oh, we'll help you out with guns. That's true, because as far as I know, like Hot Springs has, before you get to the really good guns in the camps, the militia camps, they do have a better assortment of guns. I think Lost Lake is a close second or something.
I don't think you can buy guns from Copeland.
No. I meant like when you make the choice to either give it to Tucker, there's this thing where like if you give it to Hot Springs, you get a better choice of guns. If you go to Copeland, you get a better chance of getting your old bike back. And I think the reason why I picked the Copeland's camp was because I figured, well, my bike is probably more important than guns. At least that's how Deacon sets it up, because he's really pissed. Yeah. He's pissed about the gas tank. He's pissed about like the motorcycle is like the second most important thing in his life, obviously next to Sarah, but it also has sentimental value because the gas tank was a tank that was given to him by her as a gift. So I was under the impression that they would help you find it, but no, nothing. But it makes sense because Copeland's a fucking liar and he half-asses everything. So there he is half-assing his conversation with you to give you the drugs, because there's no doctor. I would have to assume that there is no way of helping a camper if they get sick. They'd have to go scrounging. Why did they take your bike? Why did they take your bike in the first place? Because they scrapped it for parts. So yeah, they're gonna take medicine in the same way why they take everything else, because they're all about themselves. They're worried about the individual and the group, and they'll do whatever it takes to grab it. They even try to take Boozer's bike.
Yeah.
And his way of explaining it to you after you go, well, I, like most people, walked all the way over there by rite of passage of Days Gone.
Yeah.
But once you get the bike, he radios you and he says something like, and it's kind of shitty how he describes it. He goes like, hey, some of my guys are over there. They said they saw a bike, a real good looking bike. The kind of bike that your boy Boozer had. But now it's not there. Well, what happened? And you're sort of like, what happened? I fucking owned your crew, dude. You try to steal my boy's bike.
And no, not steal it. Salvage, Deke.
Oh, salvage. That's right. We're not stealing. We're salvaging. Yeah. I also like how Manny doesn't know that it's Deacon's bike, so he's really cocky about it. He's like, oh yeah, some real sucker stole the bike. He's like, and when he realizes it's his bike, he's like, whoa.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean it like that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I thought that was a nice thing. They all seem to have that idea. They're not all just following him because like, oh, follow crazy guy with a gun. They all either eventually through hanging out with him, or just they just hang out with him long enough to just adopt that idea. And they all seem to have that eventually. So anyways.
Yeah. That's all I can fit into this episode. Please come back next week for part 2 of our conversation. Don't forget, every Tuesday night, I collaborate with Spornicus Rex on a live stream playthrough of Days Gone. He goes into advanced gameplay tactics and strategy, and I discuss the story and characters. We're live on the Spornicus Rex YouTube channel Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, and if you can't tune in live, the streams are still available to watch afterwards. You can support the Days Gone podcast by leaving a review or giving us a thumbs up. That really helps the algorithm do its thing so more people can find the show. If you have friends who play Days Gone, please let them know about the podcast and perhaps give us a share on social media. You can also show your support by heading over to buymeacoffee.com/daysgonepod, where you can throw a little money in the tip jar if you're feeling generous. That really helps me with the overhead costs of running the show. And I want to give a shout out to Dandy Denny and Basics of Pain for each buying me 3 coffees this week. You guys, thank you. That really means a lot to me. All right, see you all next week. You can email me your thoughts, comments, opinions, and counter-arguments at daysgonepod@gmail.com. You can also find me moderating the Days Gone subreddit. Thanks for listening. Weaver out.